If you're interested in how highly successful investors overcome limitations and become unstoppable forces of success, you're in the right place. The Conscious Investor Podcast features weekly conversations with real estate investing experts and delivers a Monday Mindset episode to help launch your week with intention. If you believe success is for everyone willing to think, then do, these conversations will be your weekly rocket fuel.
Welcome back, Conscious Investors. This is a very special episode. And those of you who have been around since, 3 years ago, this is going to be a bit of a trip of memory lane and where the show was, where the show is, and where we are headed. I am so excited. Will probably tear up a few times in this show, only because as I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you, I was thinking, wow, it has been a journey. And a lot of you have grown personally and professionally, just as I have through this show. And I am so grateful for you. I am grateful for those of you who've been with the show because, let's face it, when this show started, how many downloads did we have? Not very many downloads. And over time, those downloads have grown because you have shared this podcast with others. You have reviewed it so that, algorithms get tripped and it starts reaching more people. And I just want you to know, above all else, I am so exorbitantly grateful for you. You are the reason I create this show. I don't create the show just because I want to sit in my studio and record a show. It is kind of interesting, unleashing the thoughts, but knowing that they are going to you makes it really special because it's not just otherwise I'd be sitting here alone in my studio, talking to the air, hearing the birds, things like that. But knowing that you are going to receive these words and that so many of you have messaged me over social platforms or we've met in person at events and you've let me know this show has been really powerful in your life. And those words you have no idea how much they fuel what I do. So first of all, I just want to celebrate you because you are amazing. And I'm so excited to be able to be part of your journey. So thank you. Thank you for inviting me into your journey. Thank you for hearing what I have to say, for listening to these extraordinary guests that come on the show each week, which blows my mind. It's so exciting. So anyway, first of all, thank you. This actually came about, this specific episode. I'm going to release it. It's going to become the anchor episode for the podcast so that people can kind of start with this episode and understand the show. So if you are here and this is the first time you've ever listened to the podcast, I just want to say thank you. You are amongst an extraordinary community of people, and we are excited that you are here and that you are listening to this for the very first time. This podcast, I thought kind of makes sense, if to do maybe a little bit of a history of for a brief moment, because over the last 2.5 years, the podcast turned 3 years old. So we're in our third year. So, we can't say we're 3 years old quite yet. We're not really three. Because I really want full years, not just saying, hey, I'm 3. No, we're not there quite yet. We're 2.5. But this podcast actually began as, that's right, some of you remember it. I was giving you a moment to think because I didn't want to spoil it. That's right. It started as this huge name. Ask Me How I Know, Multifamily Stories of Struggle to Success. Holy smokers, that is such a long SEO keyword rich title, right? It was just oh my gosh, that was way too much. But the title, I had already decided in 2019, at the end of 2019, my husband and I, in October, specifically of 2019, we went to our very first conference, and it was the Real Estate Guys Secrets of Successful Syndication. Some of you have heard me mention this before. And at that conference, it was really clear to me that I wanted to start a podcast. I mean, living 5 hours south of Calgary, Canada, you can see I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and I really needed a way to connect with other people in the multifamily space. If I wanted to go to a meetup, it's 2.5 hours down to Spokane, Washington, 2.5 hours back. That's going to be in the evening, maybe in the snow if it's wintertime, more than likely in the snow, which means icy roads. That's not really fun. So that's like 5 hours of driving in the snow, plus 2 hours at a meetup, 7 hours. And I was working full time. That just wasn't going to work. And so this podcast really made a lot of sense to me. I could not land on a name. And then in January of 2020, I know 2020 was not entirely a horrible year. That was a really fantastic year for me personally. But we were at another conference. We went to Rod Cleef's multifamily boot camp in Los Angeles. If you were there, shout out to you. We probably met. Although there were a ton of people there, I did manage to meet so many amazing people. So while we were there, Rod has this catchphrase, and it says, "Ask me how I know." And that stuck with me. And I looked at my husband, I'm like, oh, that's what I need to call my podcast. Ask me how I know. Because I knew I was still new to the syndication process, and it wasn't my area of expertise. And so I was going to be leveraging my guests' expertise to my newness, right? And it was super cool because I could ask my guests, which were these amazing, still are amazing top tier people in the industry. I can ask them anything I want to ask them, and I can learn, and they get to shine, but I get to ask all these great questions. It was so much fun. So anyhow, I landed on that. Hey, ask me how I know. And then I did the knucklehead thing of adding all those keywords and trying to make it SEO rich, which was just ridiculous. Let's just call it what it is. So in that process, I didn't feel that I could just take Rod's catchphrase and run with it, especially because I had actually joined his mentorship program, and I was thinking like, I really respect him. I obviously want to stay in his good graces. So my husband said, you really should ask. So I sent Rod this email. Hey, Rod, I really like this catchphrase. Here's the vision for this podcast. I'd really love to use Ask Me How I Know. And Rod, being Rod, he's very gregarious. He's also extraordinarily generous. He has a huge heart. And not only did he say, Julie, take the catchphrase, he said, let me support you. Can I be a guest on your show? Like, how can I help you thrive? Which just blew me away, because you hear people talk about abundance mindset and, add value to others. But to have someone of his prominence, like, be so generous to a nobody, like nobody, like I wasn't even on the radar. And yet he treated me as if I, was important. Now, I am important. You are important. I'm just saying, like, right, we all kind of say like, okay, well, I mean, Grant Cardone, he hasn't been on my show yet. I mean, is he going to want to come on my show? How am I going to get him on the show? Right. You kind of just think these people are up here. It doesn't make them better or worse. It's not a value statement. It's just, hey, we're in different, on different runways or something. So it was super cool to have Rod do that. And that gave me a little more confidence, albeit not much confidence, in inviting so many other guests to the show. That was one of those areas where I grew. So I want to share like some of the ways that I've grown. And I think you've grown over the last 2.5 years as well. And I would love in the reviews for the show, it would absolutely fill my bucket overflowing if you would drop in there how you've grown over the last 2.5 years. Even if you haven't been listening to the show for 2.5 years, and even if you've grown by some other method, like, just let us know. It's encouraging seeing that other people have had growth and progress. They're not just stagnant. So please, whatever caused you to grow, please let us know. Hey, I've grown and this is the product. One of the areas that I grew in was I had to flex this muscle where I had to go and ask people to be on my show. And I'm thinking, why is anyone going to want to be on a show that, first of all, didn't exist at the time, because you want to record some episodes first. And second of all, I'm a nobody. I have no name recognition. I really have absolutely nothing to offer these people. So why are they going to come on my show? But I went to them anyway. I felt all my discomfort. I felt all of the imposter syndrome, all of the insecurities. And these were people I very much highly respected. One of them being Monick Halm. And you've heard me mention her name many times on this show because she was the very first woman I ever heard on Bigger Pockets, as well as the very first person that I ever heard speak about apartment syndication. And it's because of her that I am exactly where I am now, right? I mean, I was doing my part. I was researching and listening and trying to grow my understanding of real estate investing to find my next best investment vehicle. And God used her and brought her voice through the podcast as I was driving up to the gym on that cold December morning. So in that process, I invited Monick Halm to the show. I sent her a message. Monick, you've played this role in my life. You're really significant. I really appreciate you. Would you please come on the show? And I was surprised. And when she said, yes, I'd love to. And then I went to another person, Damion, Lupo. Wow, I really appreciate everything you've done. I love my EQRP. I love what you guys do. I love what you stand for. I love how you add value to the world around you. Would you please come on my show? And next thing you know, Damion's on my show. And I kind of repeated this process. I also knew that I didn't want the show to just be only industry experts. And so I also invited new investors because I wanted to value investors at every stage of the journey. And so it's just been a really interesting mix of who's been on the show, where they've been at the journey. But the heart of everything has always been, who are you? What is your mindset? What is your posture towards the world, towards investing? And yeah, we have some episodes that are very solidly educational, like, you need to listen to this, like Matt Sorensen, for example. I mean, like, listen to that episode just because you want to understand self-directed funds better, or listen to Brandon Hall because you want to understand taxes better, right? Or listen to Adam Dorn because you want to understand how to use infinite banking, to leverage insurance policies and such. So, I mean, like, there are some educational episodes, but in general, we really focus on like, what has your experience been in life, and how has your mindset shifted over time, and how has that supported you in your journey and in your progression along life, right? In all of this, I really had to give myself permission to completely fail. From asking these people to come on my show to creating this content that now you see more content like that, more conversational. But when this podcast launched, everybody was fairly scripted, had some very clear questions that they were asking. And this show was unique in this way of, let's just have this casual conversation, let people eavesdrop so that they can learn and maybe find their next best move. All of this, I had to be willing to fall flat on my face. Recently, I've come up with a better way of phrasing that, and that is, you've heard me say, courage is always rewarded. I couldn't see that then, but I can see that, and I can say that now. Over time and over a lifetime of this, I can see when we step out in courage, we are rewarded. Now, that doesn't always mean we get what we want. I actually have had, I have one guest right now I haven't responded to, and I'd love to have him on the show. I actually know him. He's a big deal. You know him. Everyone knows him. But I got an email that was like asking me all these questions from the assistant, and I'm just kind of stalling out. I'm not sure why. So when he comes on the show at some point in the near future, I will let you know this is the person, right? And we'll tell a little backstory on it. It will be interesting. So courage is always rewarded, and sometimes we have to give ourselves space to grow that courage. Like, we always hear that analogy of a butterfly, and if the butterfly is trying to come out of its cocoon and you think you're helping it and you cut the cocoon open, then the butterfly won't have the blood in its wings, which the blood goes to the wings as it's trying to struggle its way out of the cocoon. And so it won't be able to fly. And so sometimes I believe it's really important for us to say, it's okay for me to give myself time to grow courage in this area. Like, courage isn't blind. Courage is being willing to do something that absolutely terrifies you. But sometimes we have to give ourselves a little bit of space in order to nurture and cultivate that. And it's okay to do that. I'm curious, where are you doing that right now in your life? Because honestly, I think that we all need to have areas in our life where we are continually growing courage, right? Once we take the courageous step in one area, we should be incubating this other area where it's like, okay, well, now we're going to like incubate the courage for this next big step. Another area that was really critical for me to grow, and that has paid dividends, not just with the podcast, but in all facets of my life, is self-discipline. Since March 2nd, 2020, on this show, I have consistently released one Monday Mindset episode and one industry leader episode every single week. 2 episodes every single week for 2.5 years. I'm saying that's a high five. I'm so proud of myself, because over 2.5 years, you can imagine there were times where I didn't want to grow. No, I always want to grow, but I didn't want to sit and do the work. Maybe it was all sunny and beautiful outside, and I was stuck at that time up in my husband's office and hot and sweaty, and I don't want to do this. Or, oh, it's a Sunday night. Oh gosh, guys, there were Sunday nights or Monday mornings where I was self-editing, that mindset episode to be released that day. Like, I was just absolutely determined, no matter what, I'm going to be consistent. This is going to happen. And life didn't happen. And there's a bigger picture there for each of us. And that is, we can choose. We choose. We decide. Trust me, over 2.5 years, there are plenty of times where I could have just made an excuse. I'm sick. Literally, that could have been an excuse at some point along 2.5 years. I'm tired. My kids need this. I mean, I could have made so many very reasonable, very rational excuses as to why I didn't release an episode. And yet, every time I would try to start to entertain those type of things, I would say, is that really what I want to look back on? You have your streak going, you know where you want to go, you know the reputation, and you know how you want to serve your audience. So girl, suck it up, stick with it. You've got this. Where's an area where you're cutting yourself too much slack? Like, it's important that we're nice to ourselves. I get that. But sometimes we do need to be our boss, and we need to say, hey, fall in line, get it done. And trust me, I've definitely had to do that. But that also pays out dividends in other parts of my life. Honestly, right now, as I'm recording this episode, this is not the number one thing I really want to be doing right now. I'm working on rebuilding, not rebuilding, but kind of correcting some areas on my website with my brand Sherpa. She's been on the podcast, Monick. If you're needing anyone to help you with your brand or, help you with your website, you need to go to onauthentic.com because she's extraordinary and one of my best friends. And I'm like, I don't want to fail her. I want to make sure I have all that work done. So honestly, part of me would just be like, oh, I just want to go work on this design work for her, or this the copywriting for these sections for her so that she can do her part. But that would be an excuse. Could I justify it? Sure. We can always justify what we want to, but you know what's more important to me? You. I want to make sure that you have an understanding and an awareness and the encouragement, and that you are able to grow so that you can take your next step. So ask yourself, where are you cutting yourself too much slack? Where are you being a little bit too nice? Over the last 2.5 years, I've also learned that DIYing things is not always the very best. Hence, Monica is working, my brand Sherpa, as I affectionately refer to her. And I had to hire someone to take care of my podcast. I had made a commitment that very first year. The commitment was, I will self-edit. I will run this show all by myself. I don't know why. I just felt like I needed to do that, all while holding down a full-time job. I'm not sure, and going through the pandemic. Interesting times. But I made a commitment that I would only do it 1 year. And one of the very best things that I learned through that whole DIY process was, sure, I can create this podcast. I can edit it. I can do all this and figure it out. But now I've learned to ask myself some really critical questions. Is this the best use of my time? Do I have time to learn how to do this? What would it look like if someone else took care of this? How would I use my time? And I also had to really wrestle with my money mindset and say, is this a scarcity money mindset? Am I just limiting myself because of fear in a wrong mindset? Bringing light bulb podcast editing services into my life, working with Natalie, hands down, one of the best decisions ever. Like, partnering with people to help amplify, like, my voice, the podcast gets amplified because now I'm out of the granular of it and I'm able to focus on other elements to serve you better. So it's absolutely amazing when we're willing to say, okay, no more DIY time. It's time to, step up, bring someone on board, partner up, so that I can create the highest caliber opportunities for everyone around me. Amongst the many other things that happened over the last 2.5 years, last fall, well, actually, it was last summer, I started to really feel disconnected with Ask Me How I Know. I started to feel like, is this the right name for the podcast? Do I just need to stop the podcast? Do I need to have a different podcast? And I started wrestling with this. And my friend, Austin Linney, and his fiance, Cassie, were up visiting. And through that process, while we were out hiking, that's where the Conscious Investor was born. Through a conversation up on one of my favorite hikes to the top of Clifty, we just worked through this process as Austin kept asking me questions, as good friends do. And it was like, oh yeah, this rebrand, it was imminent. And that's when it happened. So I was clear that, and there's a word right there, clarity, right? You've heard me say clarity is key. We have a vision, we get clear on what that vision is, and then we take action. So I had already taken action on a vision, and it was clear initially when I launched Ask Me How I Know, but that clarity started to fade because we'd kind of outgrown Ask Me How I Know, and we needed something else that would be able to really grow with us. And that's where the Conscious Investor, it grows with us and stays with us along the way, because when we are continually pursuing awareness, purpose, contribution, connection, all of those things, those are all wrapped up in just this consciousness, as we're calling it here at the Conscious Investor. And we really want to zero in on those elements within our investment practices. And so the conscious investor, I think, is going to stick around for quite some time. And that's where I want to go. Hey, where are we headed now on the Conscious Investor podcast? If this is your first time here, this is your first time here, but it's been around, and we're now headed into 3 very, very important areas. And I have 3 very clear goals for you, the listeners, but I want to hear back from you. I want to know if these goals align with you, if this is going to support you, because I want to produce content that is going to help you reach your goals. So one of the first goals that I want to do is, continue to help grow your mindset. There are a lot of vehicles to do that these days, but I want the Conscious Investor to be one of those resources that you can dip into each week to help really set your intention for your week and help you grow and cultivate a rich mindset so that you can show up in the world as that very best person that you are. You have this extraordinary contribution within you, and sometimes we just don't know how to access that. And through those mindset episodes, through personal growth, we are able to unlock that gift that we have to give to the world. I want to help you do that. I also want to continue inviting industry experts onto the show. One of my favorite episodes is with Chris Roberts. And I just loved seeing this other side of him. We got to hear stories of his mindset being forged in his teen years when he's, at one point living in a car and going through these life experiences. These are things that he even says on the episode. Wow, I don't know that I've ever said this anywhere else. That's what we want on this show. We want those parts of your favorite industry experts and people that you want to get to know better. I want this to be your hub to say, hey, I know that if that person's over on the Conscious Investor, I know we're going to see a different side of them. We're not going to get the same old canned stories, and we're not going to hear the same information. We're going to hear another facet of them, and it's going to be rich on that mindset, and it's going to help me understand them better and myself better. And the third goal that I have, go figure, my company, 3 Keys Investments, is going to have 3 goals on the Conscious Investor podcast, right? But the third goal that I do have for this show is that this show is going to empower you to take your very next or 50th step, right? I mean, when I say next step, it might be your first step into investing. It might be your first step into high performance coaching. It might be your 100th step into the investing space. But we all have, no matter where we're at on a journey, we all have the next step, right? Otherwise, we're just going to stop and stagnate. So I know that you are committed to progressing forward. And so I want to be here to support you in taking that next step. Now, here's how I could use some help from you in helping you, right? Help me help you. I think there is a movie quote, maybe from Jerry Maguire or something. So what I would like to ask of you is, will you shoot me a message? You can shoot me a message over on LinkedIn. You could shoot me an email, julie@3keysinvestments.com, and just say, my next step. I'm always about creating opportunities to support people, my investors, my listeners, my co-GPs. I'm always about creating that next opportunity for you to be empowered to take your next step. It's difficult to do that if I don't know what the next step that you are aiming to take is. So let me know what that is. Maybe I'll invite a specific industry expert on, because I know a lot of really great people. And if I know what you're working on, I can bring people on very strategically just for you. And if you send me a message and you are okay with me name dropping, I'll name drop you and say, hey, you know what? So-and-so really wanted to grow, and here's what they were looking for. And I know you're the person to help me. Okay, so make sure, let me know. Or if it's a mindset, let me know what mindset you want support with, and we'll create an episode all about that to help you out. You are awesome. I am so grateful to have shared the space with you for 2.5 years. I am super stoked as to where the show is headed, and even more appreciative and grateful for you taking time to listen to the show. Now, please make sure you share the show with someone else. It doesn't have to be this episode if you don't want to. There are so many episodes, nearly 300 episodes to choose from. So choose your favorite episode, send it to someone, and make sure that you rate and review the episode, because you know what? Those really fuel my tank. And also remember, Three Keys Investments, my company, has amazing opportunities. We actually have a few opportunities coming up this year that will definitely support your investments. But you're not going to get in on those deals unless you're part of the very free Three Keys Investors Club. So make sure you head over to the website, threekeysinvestments.com, apply for the Investor Club. It's free. We just want to make sure that we have all the right people and all the right information so that we're compliant. But make sure that you head over there and join us. That way, when deals come up, you have a choice. You're opting in, like, okay, at least I can say no to the opportunity instead of never seeing the opportunity at all. You are awesome. And always remember, adventure belongs on the trail, not in our investing. Until next time, live big, love bear.
A lot of people missed out on my recent offering because they simply weren't on my investor list. Being on my newsletter list won't provide you with access to the deals I have. This is because 506B regulations require you and I actually discuss your investment goals before I can show you the deals I have. If you're on the fence about investing in apartments, schedule a call today at threekeysinvestments.com. If you think you're new, so you don't want to be on an investor list, you're missing out on opportunities to refine your ability to review offerings because you simply will never see them. So head over to Three Keys Investments and schedule a call.